The point of this commemoration fund is to ensure that the stories of our stolen sisters are put in the rightful place in Canada's history so that we may never forget.
Tonight, honoring the memory of the women and girls of our nations.
But it is on unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin territory, and we have to respect that.
3 national Indigenous organizations are confronted with a wigwam, symbolic of Algonquin nationhood, at a prime piece of real estate. And Blue Jays fans will have the honor of standing to their Canadian anthem in Cree. Good evening, welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. A small band in BC's southern interior is excited about the approval of the Trans Mountain Expansion Project. They initially fought the pipeline, but now have big hopes for equity ownership. APTN's Lori Hamlin has the details.
Whispering Pines Clinton Indian Band is a small rural community north of Kamloops.
We're tired of watching everybody else garner wealth from our resources and not share it with us appropriately.
From end to end, the reserve is about 3 kilometers, and for the last 6 decades, there's been a pipeline running through its entire length.
It's not a long distance at all, but it's like right down the middle.
Trans Mountain built the pipeline in 1953. In 2007, Kinder Morgan approached the band about its intent to twin the line from Alberta to BC. Despite never having any issues with the original pipeline, Chief Bellegarde says he and his community were immediately against the project.
We're, rural, farm boys, cowboys, whatever you want to call us. We raise our own cows and pigs for winter food, as well as we hunt for deer. And so we really need their feed to be clean, to be as organic as possible. And so that's really what drove this, right? Because when they came and said we're going to twin it, and we're like, it scared us because we didn't understand what that meant for the environment.
For 5 years, the band fought the project, but after a full year of intense negotiations and consultation, the pipeline was approved unanimously in a community vote. In the end, the chief wasn't interested in just signing a mutual benefit agreement. He's been pushing for equity in the line since 2012. But a stake in the project wasn't an option until Canada bought the pipeline.
We've always wanted, equity, and we understand the oil and gas business and its value. And so owning a piece of it would accomplish a lot of things for us.
There are only 20 homes in his community for 80 full-time members. The rest of the 100 members live off reserve. The chief says revenue from the pipeline will not only help build housing, but give his band a better future.
I want to have the governments, provincial, federal, and companies see the good folks here and invest in them. And that's all I'm trying to do. Take today to make a better tomorrow.
Bellegarde is part of the Western Indigenous Pipeline Group. They represent the impacted communities that want ownership in the pipeline. They've partnered with the Toronto Dominion Securities, and the group isn't worried that some people believe the project is no longer economically viable.
When we have other Canadian financial institutes calling, saying we would like to partner, we would like to help, I think those guys have more credibility than the folks on Twitter.
Other Indigenous groups have also come forward to buy into the line, but Bellegarde says Ottawa should favor his group's bid.
We bear all the risks, and so that we should have that preferential treatment when it comes to purchasing. And if we can't do it, then by all means we'll let somebody else do it. But I think with the partners that we have now, we can do it. We can purchase as much of this pipe as we can.
The federal government is expected to meet with all Indigenous groups interested in equity late this summer. Lori Hamlin, APTN National News, Kamloops.
More than 100 projects commemorating the lives of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls are getting funding from the federal government. Today, Gender Equality Minister Mariam Monsef was in Winnipeg to make the announcement. Follows a recommendation from the National Inquiry's interim report. As Brittany Hobson shows us, families are at the heart of each project.
Mere meters
hours away from a monument honoring missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Manitoba, the federal government announced it would fund projects across Canada, following a recommendation for a Commemoration fund from the National Inquiry's interim report. Marianne Monsef is Canada's Gender Equality Minister. She says the fund will contribute to raising awareness in the country.
The point of this Commemoration Fund is to ensure that the stories of our stolen sisters are put in their rightful place in Canada's history, so that we may never forget, so that we may move forward on the next chapter of our story together towards healing and prevention.
The government committed $13 million over the course of 2 years. 105 projects were approved. They range from installations to exhibits and a traveling opera, and only came with one condition.
Families are at the heart of this. All 100+ commemorations have had a letter of support from families.
One of those family members is Angela Lavallee. She teamed up with grassroots organization Manitoba Moon Voices to create a structure that will sit on Winnipeg's frozen Red River in the winter. It will be in the shape of a woman and will act as an educational tool for people passing by.
We want to be able to draw in community outside of our own community. So we want her to sit on the river, beautiful, just resilient, just kind of like the symbolization of Indigenous women themselves.
The Manitoba Inuit Association put forth a proposal for the Red Amauti project. A team from the organization will travel to communities in Nunavut and northern Labrador, where locals will help sew the traditional jacket.
The Red Amauti is an Inuit women's parka, and in the back, that's where they carry their children. So it symbolizes women and girls. And as we know, the red dress is the commemorative symbol for mmiwg, but Inuit really want to create that space for their stories and experiences.
Funding started flowing this week. Projects will be rolled out over the next 2 years. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The war of words is heating up over a stake in the new Indigenous space in Ottawa. The former American embassy was handed over to the AFN, MNC, and ITK by the Prime Minister 2 years ago. In a press conference last week, the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Tribal Council announced they want a 25% stake in it. Algonquin and Anishinaabe Grand Chief Verna Paulson began living in a wigwam in front of the building last Thursday. She wants a meeting with Métis National Council President Clem Cartier. But MNC Vice President David Chartrand is handling the issue. He says the Algonquin demand is an Assembly of First Nations issue. Chartrand is followed by a response from National Chief Perry Bellegarde.
The Algonquins are a member in belonging to the AFN, and AFN wants to give their seat and their 1/3 share to Algonquins. They're more than willing to do so, and well, that's what we'll work with, whoever AFN appoints. But it doesn't mean that MMF and ITK have got to give up their 1/3 to appease Algonquins when it's an AFN issue.
And so we're going to try to meet as soon as we can, bringing all parties together to dialogue and discuss this. And hopefully we'll find the common ground, because it's a good news story. Especially 100 Wellington is right across from the House of Commons. So it's prime real estate in that territory. But it is on unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin territory, and we have to respect that.
And we want to hear what you think. Here's how to continue the conversation. Send your emails to news@aptn.ca. Find us online at aptnnews.ca and on youtube.com/aptnnews. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest Indigenous news. After a month of being evacuated, members of the Prairie Metis settlement have returned home. A wildfire in northern Alberta forced hundreds to flee. For some, there was no home to return to. Tamara Pimentel has the story.
Just come to my house and see it like this, like, I don't know what to think anymore.
This is where Ronnie Cardinal's home once stood. Here he lived off the land with his wife and 4 children. Now nothing but memories remain.
Because everything is gone. All of our hunting territory is burnt. All of our trapping territory is gone. It's going to be a struggle now.
Down the road, smoke still smolders around his family home. 15 houses were lost in a massive wildfire that forced the community of Prairie Metis settlement to flee back in May. After being evacuated for 1 month, members returned home to a bittersweet welcoming from leaders.
A little choked up, happy to be here. It was very heartbreaking knowing that community members lost their homes. We were fortunate enough to not lose ours.
We just lost a little piece of our house, so we are okay. But it's the community's hanging in together, which is really good to see.
As for Cardinal, he's staying with family. Others that have lost their homes will have temporary housing available to them. Vice Chair Lori Wanich says the Métis Settlement General Council have provided funding to begin the rebuild of homes.
MSGC gave us funding as an emergency to help rebuild the homes as fast as possible. And we're confident that the government is going to replace those funds. They wanted to get the process flowing faster so we could get those 15 homes built as fast as possible.
Cardinal says the past month has been a nightmare, and although this will be rebuilt one day, nothing can replace a home full of memories.
This was my home. I never left this place. And it's very hard to see it like this.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, on the Prairie Metis settlement.
The Congress of Aboriginal Peoples says the federal government is ignoring them. That story and more still to come after the break. Here's a look at Tuesday's weather forecast, starting on the East Coast, where there's plenty of sun. 27 in Fredericton, 8 with rain in Nain, 14 and rain for Happy Valley Goose Bay, showers, and 23 for Montreal and Quebec City. 25 under the sun in Toronto, showers, and 26 in Ottawa, 26 and showers in Thunder Bay, 21 with rain in Wawa, 14 with showers for Puckatawagan, 25 and rain for Winnipeg, Princess Harbor, and Ferns River, 21 with showers in Saskatoon, showers, and 23 in Regina, 17 with rain for Buffalo Narrows and La Ronge. Welcome back. In the Northwest Territories, there are challenges preventing elderly people from aging in their home community. Our reporter Charlotte Moore-Jacobs traveled to the South Slave, where many are facing healthcare services.
The left side of her was paralyzed, so she had to stay in hospital for a few
Sharon
days.
Lafferty watched both of her elderly parents leave their home, not because they wanted to, but because they had to access services. A common occurrence in communities like Dunninakwe, which has no elders facility.
I think that if we cared for them in our community, they would not get lonesome. They would have more of their own traditional foods. They would have visitors, personal care from their own caregivers.
After a stroke, Lafferty's mom was medevaced to Yellowknife to receive care for over a year. Her husband was left behind.
And at that age, separating her from my dad kind of affected my dad's health. He was a diabetic, and he really stopped caring for his health, I guess, because he was so lonesome with my mom.
Lafferty says many issues arise when elders receive care outside of their community, like in the instance of her 87-year-old father, who had to move to Hay River.
When he was there, they were wondering why he wasn't talking. They didn't even know he was deaf. So there was no communication between two hospitals.
The elders facility closed 10 years ago due to territorial government funding cuts. It's now partially used for offices. Across the road, Mavis Claus, Sharon's cousin, is packing up her house.
You don't go see a doctor because you want to. The nurse will tell you when to go see the doctor. And each time you go see the nurse, it's a different nurse. And there you have to go explaining yourself again.
Living here as a diabetic, she's waited more than 2 years to see a foot specialist. Better health care was just one reason to move. Claus and her neighbor Howard Bolio say they have to keep their doors locked at all times because of crime motivated by a nearby bootlegger. Bolio had a stroke that left him with limited mobility.
Could he communicate this to the RCMP, going through a Yellowknife detachment, and them not able to understand his English? It is limited because of his paralysis.
In the fall of 2018, a petition prompted by the band office circulated. It called on the NWT health minister to reopen the elders facility and received over 100 signatures, eventually to be read by the local MLA in the Legislative Assembly. There's been no discussion since. While Lafferty says the petition was a good start, it will take more work to keep their elders at home. Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Danenekwe, Fort Resolution.
To mark Indigenous Peoples Day, the city of Montreal stripped the name of the man who invented biological warfare from one of its downtown streets. General Jeffrey Amherst was responsible for distributing smallpox-infested blankets to Indigenous settlements in what was then called New France. During a ceremony on Friday, the mayor of Montreal revealed that Amherst Street will be officially changed to Atadagon Street this fall. The Mohawk word means brotherhood and fraternity between nations.
And I just love this idea, this name, because Montreal is about, being inclusive, being open-minded, to being wanting to work through our differences. So to me, this is a very great name. So this is one of the many ways we can contribute to the reconciliation process.
The Congress of Aboriginal Peoples says the federal government is ignoring the organization in favor of the other 4 national Indigenous organizations. On Thursday, on the street just below West Block, CAP held a demonstration attended by about 50 people. Its national chief, Robert Bertrand, and well-known Algonquin elder Claudette Comada demanded recognition and respect.
Keep raising your voices. Don't let anyone take your voice away from you. Don't anyone tell you that you're not worth it. Don't let anyone tell you that you do not deserve to be recognized, that you do not deserve to have rights.
I was elected in 2016. 2016, we met with the Prime Minister, and Minister Bennett was there, and he said, yes, we'll meet every year. Ask me, how many times has he met me since 2016, since that meeting? Not once. We have letters. He doesn't even take the time to answer us. And you're asking me why we are so upset? We are being forgotten.
The BC Court of Appeal has issued a landmark decision today, ruling that Canada's solitary confinement laws are unconstitutional and must be struck down. The court unanimously confirmed that prolonged or indefinite solitary confinement in prisons disproportionately deprives an inmate of life, liberty, and security. The ruling upholds the BC Supreme Court's 2018 decision that solitary confinement endangers lives. Lawyers say this will have serious implications for new federal legislation passed by Parliament last Friday that continues to allow prolonged solitary confinement under certain circumstances. A young Cree artist from Alberta is about to get the chance of a lifetime. More on that after the break. Here's the rest of Tuesday's weather forecast, picking back up in northern Alberta. Showers and 20 for Fort McMurray. Rain and 23 in Medicine Hat, a high of 16 with rain for Calgary. Sunny on the west coast, 21 for Victoria and Vancouver. Sunny and 22 in Dease Lake, 20 with showers for Smithers. Sunny and a high of 10 in Old Crow, chance of snow and a high of 5 for Rock River. 26 with rain for Fort Liard, Trout Lake, and Fort Simpson. 0 in Sachs Harbor, rain, and 5 in Paulatuck. 14 under sunny skies for Repulse Bay, 13 with showers in Baker Lake. 8 and sunny for Arctic Bay and Joe Haley. Welcome back. Kyra Bruno is getting ready for the biggest performance of her young life. On June 29th, she will be singing "O Canada" in Toronto at the Blue Jays game, and she'll be singing it in Cree. APTN's Chris Stewart talked to the Edmonton singer before she headed out east.
Oh, Canada, Nikinan, Nitaskinan.
Kaya has done quite a lot in her 13 years. She has already performed in TV shows and in the movies. The multi-talented youth is now packing her bags to fly to Toronto to sing to 20,000 people at the Toronto Blue Jays game. She has performed the anthem at the local baseball club in Edmonton and several others, including the Esqueo Awards, which honors Indigenous women in Alberta. But to perform in front of tens of thousands of people can be scary.
I think it's going to be a little bit more nerve-wracking because it is a bigger stadium than, say, the Prospects or like the other community events that I've sang at. So it's going to be really fun, but I'm still a little bit nervous.
She says she will be singing the anthem in her native Cree, then switching to English towards the end of the song. Kaya wants to do more acting. She already has a nice resume.
I act, I did short films a few months ago, and last summer I did a game show with my mom and something with APTN. It's called That's Awesome.
Bring it on!
The Jays play the Royals on the 29th. It will be an experience this 13-year-old will remember for her lifetime. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
What an amazing opportunity that's going to be. Legendary daredevils Nick and Leanna Walinda have successfully completed another stunt. This time they crossed New York's Times Square on a tightrope 25 stories high, and they had to cross each other in the middle. Take a look.
Really, really good so far.
Solid.
The siblings walked from opposite ends of the 296-meter wire. The feat is even more fascinating when you consider that this was Leanna's first public performance since her near-fatal accident 2 years ago when she broke nearly every bone in her face. Frightening. I don't even like being on the top of this building. That's your APTN National News for this Monday. Stay up to date with the latest by visiting our website, aptnnews.ca, and by downloading the APTN News app. I'm Dennis Moore. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here tomorrow.